Do you feel it too? That quiet unease when you see the floods swallowing homes, the fires eating forests, and the storms growing louder each year. You tell yourself, someone will fix it. But here's the truth. No one is coming. We are the generation standing at the edge of history. And the clock is not just ticking. It's screaming. The world has heard 1,000 promises, 1,000 excuses. But promises don't stop rising seas. And excuses don't rebuild what's already lost. So, if you're here expecting comfort, I can't give it to you. But if you're ready to face reality, to feel that uncomfortable truth, then stay. Because this is not just a speech. This is your final warning before silence becomes our legacy. We once believed we had decades to act. Now, we count in years, in months, in melting ice caps. Leaders gather in grand halls, signing papers filled with elegant words. Yet outside, the air grows hotter, the forests thinner, and the oceans angrier. We talk about goals, policies, and targets, as if the planet negotiates. It doesn't. Nature does not debate, it reacts, and the reaction has begun. Every drought, every flood, every displaced family, they are the consequences of our delay. We told ourselves, it's too hard, it's too expensive, it's someone else's problem. But now, the cost of inaction is greater than any action we feared. The truth is painful, but powerful, because pain wakes us up. It forces us to move. We cannot recycle our way out of this crisis. We cannot tweet, post, or pray our way to safety. We must act, even when it's inconvenient, even when it demands sacrifice. This is not about saving the planet. The planet will survive. It's about saving ourselves, our homes, our children, our future. There will be a day when history looks back on us, on you, and the question will not be, did you know? The question will be, did you act? We are out of excuses, and we are out of time. But we are not out of hope. Not yet. Hope is not something you wait for. It's something you create. With your voice, with your courage, with your choices. Today. So don't wait for permission. Don't wait for tomorrow. Because tomorrow is already too late. The world stands at a crossroads unlike any other moment in human history. For years, we have whispered warnings, signed agreements, and held conferences filled with powerful words. Yet, despite all the noise, the silence of action has been deafening. The temperature rises, the glaciers retreat, the storms grow angrier, and still, we search for comfort in illusions. But illusions cannot cool a burning planet. They cannot save the forests gasping for breath. They cannot turn back the clock. The urgency of this moment is not a matter of opinion, politics, or preference. It is a matter of survival. We have reached the line where time itself is no longer a luxury, but a vanishing resource. Every year we delay. Every promise that remains only words pushes us closer to a reality where our choices no longer matter. The idea that we can wait, that somehow someone else will fix it, has become the deadliest lie of all. We are not waiting for the future. The future is already here, knocking at our door, demanding accountability for everything we refuse to see. The phrase, "We are out of excuses" is not a slogan, it's a verdict, a judgment passed not by politicians or scientists, but by the planet itself. The signs are not subtle anymore. They are written across the sky in black smoke, whispered in the crackling of burning forests, carved into the parched earth that used to be fertile. Oceans are swelling with fury, swallowing coastlines, erasing towns, eroding entire histories. These are not predictions. They are headlines. They are our present tense. For too long, humanity has hidden behind convenient narratives. We have blamed the system, the industries, the leaders, the circumstances, anyone and anything that could carry the burden of responsibility so we wouldn't have to. But every excuse has now crumbled under the weight of truth. We said it was too early to act. Now it's almost too late. We said it was too costly. Now the price of doing nothing is measured in lives. We said others were responsible. Now everyone is affected. The excuses have run out because the evidence is overwhelming. Nature no longer negotiates. The ice sheets do not care about your economic plans. The rising seas will not wait for political debates. The storms will not pause until the next election cycle. We are facing forces that do not respond to our words, only to our actions. And our inaction has spoken louder than anything else. This crisis did not arrive overnight. It was built slowly, carefully, through decades of denial and distraction. We celebrated progress while ignoring the smoke rising behind our factories. We invented technologies to connect every corner of the world, but forgot that the ground beneath our feet is what connects us all. We extracted, we consumed, we expanded, and we convinced ourselves that growth without limit was the definition of success. But growth built on destruction is not progress. It is decay disguised as development. The urgency is not just environmental, it is moral. Because this is not about saving distant glaciers or protecting rare species. It's about justice. About the people already losing their homes to floods. The farmers watching their land turn to dust. The children breathing in air so thick it poisons their future before they even have one. The urgency is written in the faces of those who contribute least to the problem, yet suffer the most from its consequences. How many more lives must be displaced before we admit that this is not a distant threat, but a present catastrophe? The collapse of excuses also reveals something deeper, our fear of responsibility. We have built a world that rewards comfort, not courage. When the truth became inconvenient, we buried it under distraction. When science raised alarms, we drowned it in denial. When youth demanded change, we told them to be patient. And now the patience of the planet has run out. The storms will not wait for our comfort zones to expand. The fires will not slow down until we feel ready. The melting ice will not pause for us to finish debating whether it's real. The time for comfortable conversations is over. We are witnessing the breakdown of every justification that once allowed us to delay action. "It's not my problem" has become impossible to say when floods reach your doorstep. "It's not urgent" has lost meaning when every summer breaks the record of the last. Technology will save us sounds hollow when innovation itself is built on the same systems that fuel destruction. The truth is, every path forward demands sacrifice, and every sacrifice we avoided has multiplied the cost. And yet, within this urgency lies a strange kind of clarity. When all excuses are gone, what remains is choice. Raw, unavoidable, and immediate. We either act now with intention or react later in desperation. There is no middle ground left to stand on. We cannot negotiate with physics. We cannot debate chemistry. We cannot persuade nature with speeches. But we can change what we do next. The clock we ignored for decades has reached its final stretch, and every second matters. This is not an alarm for someone else. It's for all of us. We are not spectators of this crisis. We are its authors. Every purchase, every vote, every silence adds a line to the story we are writing. And the ending is still unwritten. That is the only hope we have left, that as long as we are breathing, the story is still being told. But to change the ending, we must first face the truth that no one else will fix this. There is no hero coming to save us. The solution will not arrive in the next technology, the next summit, or the next generation. It begins here, in the uncomfortable realization that we have run out of time to pretend. The only thing left to do is act. Not someday, not when it's easy, but now. We once said, the next generation will handle it. But that generation is here, watching, demanding, pleading for a world that isn't slipping away in front of their eyes. The era of excuses was the era of illusions. Now begins the era of truth, brutal, urgent, and unstoppable. The urgency of this moment is our test, and the collapse of excuses is our last chance to pass it. We will not get another one. The hands of the clock move forward, not back, and history will remember what we did with the time that remained when the excuses finally ran out. We are out of excuses, and we are out of time. But that means something extraordinary. The fog of denial has lifted. There is no confusion left. What remains is the clearest message the world has ever sent. Act now, or lose everything you love. There comes a moment in every story when the path behind us disappears, and the path ahead demands a decision. Humanity has reached that moment. The turning point is not some distant horizon. It's here, now, pulsing beneath our feet, pressing against our choices, waiting for us to answer. We have been walking on borrowed time, pretending that progress and destruction can coexist forever. But the earth has drawn its line, and it no longer whispers. It roars. It demands that we choose between what is easy and what is right. The turning point is not marked by a date or a conference or a declaration. It is marked by awareness. That sharp, unavoidable realization that the future is no longer something we anticipate. It is something we are actively shaping with every action, every policy, every silence. The world does not wait for our readiness. Nature does not care for our comfort. The only thing that matters now is direction. Will we continue walking toward collapse, or will we finally turn toward survival? This moment is not just another crisis among many. It is the defining test of who we are. It asks us whether convenience will outweigh conscience, whether greed will silence gratitude, and whether fear will paralyze courage. The turning point is a mirror held up to humanity, and it reflects everything we have become. Powerful, intelligent, creative, yet careless, distracted, and afraid to change. But it also reflects what we can still be: resilient, united, capable of rewriting our destiny. Every great change begins with a moment of reckoning, and this is ours. For centuries, we have measured success by what we could build, produce, or own. But perhaps true success is not measured by expansion, but by endurance, by whether we can sustain life, not just extract from it. We once believed we could bend nature to our will. Now we see that nature bends only one way, toward balance. The more we resist that balance, the harsher the correction becomes. The turning point challenges every illusion we've built to protect ourselves from responsibility. It asks us to abandon the comforting myths that someone else will act first, that small efforts don't matter, that it's already too late. These are not truths, they are excuses dressed as wisdom. The truth is harder, but it's freeing. We are the generation standing in the middle of the storm, holding the power to steer it. The direction we choose will define centuries. This moment calls for courage, not the loud kind that shouts in headlines, but the quiet, persistent kind that refuses to give up when the world stops paying attention. The courage to question our habits, to face the guilt of our consumption, to rebuild what we've broken instead of pretending it was never ours to begin with. Every act of courage, no matter how small, becomes part of a collective turning, a pivot toward survival. The turning point is not only global, it is deeply personal. It happens in the choices we make when no one is watching: how we live, how we vote, how we speak, how we teach our children to see the world. It happens when we realize that change is not something we wait for. It's something we decide to be. This is where transformation begins, not in speeches or promises, but in the quiet decision to live differently, even when the world around us resists. And so, as we stand at this threshold, there can be no half measures. We cannot keep one foot in denial and the other in action. The time for hesitation has expired. The turning point demands clarity. Not tomorrow, not next year, but today. Because if we fail to decide, the decision will be made for us by drought, by flood, by famine, by fire, and that decision will not be kind. This is where the fourth truth emerges, the shift of responsibility. For too long, we have treated this crisis as if it belonged to someone else. We look to governments, corporations, and distant figures for salvation, forgetting that every system is built from people. People like us, with choices that ripple outward. The responsibility has always been ours, only hidden beneath the illusion of helplessness. The responsibility shift is not a burden, it is an awakening. It reminds us that power has never been limited to parliaments or boardrooms. Power lives in the collective force of individuals who decide that enough is enough. It lives in the millions who refuse to accept that destruction is inevitable. When responsibility shifts from them to us, the impossible begins to move. We must stop waiting for permission to do what is right. The permission was always there, in the beating of our hearts, in the conscience that stirs when we see injustice. Responsibility means more than awareness. It means ownership. Ownership of our impact, our privilege, our potential to do better. It means realizing that every small act of responsibility accumulates into a global force, a decision to reduce, to repair, to restore. These are not small things. They are the seeds of survival. The shift of responsibility also means dismantling the comforting belief that one voice cannot matter. It always matters. Every revolution in history began with one voice that refused to stay silent. Responsibility begins in conversation, but grows into action. It demands that we hold leaders accountable, that we challenge systems of profit that depend on the planet's pain, that we choose integrity over convenience. The shift is not easy, because responsibility never is, but it is the only path that leads forward. We often speak of change as though it's something we can schedule, something that fits neatly into plans and projections. But change does not wait for our convenience. It begins when someone, somewhere, decides that enough is not just a word, but a line in the sand. That line is being drawn now. The shift of responsibility is not a call to guilt. It's a call to empowerment. Because if we are responsible, that means we still have control. We still have the ability to rewrite what happens next. The truth is, when we realize the responsibility is ours, the fear begins to fade. Helplessness turns into purpose. Blame turns into momentum. Every person who accepts their role becomes a spark. And millions of sparks can light a world that has grown dark with despair. We are not powerless. We are powerful beyond measure. What we lack is not ability, but willingness. The shift of responsibility is the bridge between awareness and action, between fear and hope. The turning point and the shift of responsibility are two sides of the same coin. One reveals the urgency, the other reveals the power. Together, they form the heart of this moment in history. The moment when humanity must decide what story it will tell. Will we be remembered as the generation that watched the world burn while arguing about blame? Or as the generation that took ownership, turned around, and built something new from the ashes? We are no longer spectators. The turning point is here. The responsibility is ours. And though the weight is immense, it carries within it the greatest possibility of all. The chance to become the generation that changed everything. The clock still ticks, the sea still rises, but as long as we breathe, it is not over. The power to turn this around was never lost. It was only waiting for us to claim it. The future was once a promise. A bright horizon filled with hope, progress, and possibility. We used to speak of it as something guaranteed, something waiting patiently for us to arrive. But that promise has faded into uncertainty. The future is no longer a distant dream. It's a fragile echo trembling under the weight of our choices. For the first time in human history, we can see the end of what we once believed was endless. The forests that stood for centuries now vanish in weeks. The oceans that fed generations are choking on our waste. The air that once carried songs now carries smoke. The future is not waiting, it is crying out for rescue. Every decision we make today writes the script that tomorrow must perform. And right now, the story we are writing is one of loss. Loss of life, loss of balance, loss of innocence. The next generation will inherit a planet altered beyond recognition, not because it was inevitable, but because we delayed, because we waited for someone else to lead, for someone else to care, for someone else to begin. But the future cannot wait for our hesitation. It moves forward with or without us, shaped not by what we intended, but by what we allowed. Imagine a child born today. By the time they learn to walk, entire ecosystems will have vanished. By the time they learn to read, millions will be displaced by climate disasters. By the time they become adults, the decisions we make right now, in this moment, will have sealed their fate. They will inherit the consequences of a world that refused to listen when there was still time. What will we tell them when they ask why? Will we say we didn't know? Because we did. Will we say we couldn't? Because we could. Or will we finally say we acted? Not when it was easy, but when it was necessary. The future in jeopardy is not just an environmental issue. It is a human issue. It touches every corner of existence. Food, water, shelter, security, dignity. The climate crisis amplifies every injustice, deepens every inequality, and threatens every right we once thought unshakable. It spares no one, but it strikes the vulnerable first. The farmer watching his crops fail is part of this story. The islander watching her home disappear beneath the sea is part of this story. The families fleeing droughts and fires are part of this story. And whether we admit it or not, so are we. We have built our lives on systems that feed on the future. Systems that take more than they give. That reward profit over preservation, comfort over conscience. But a civilization that consumes its future cannot call itself advanced. It is a civilization on the edge of collapse, mistaking self-destruction for success. The signs of that collapse are no longer hidden. They are written in fire across continents, in floods that sweep away cities, in the silence of species that will never return. But here lies the paradox. Even as the future hangs by a thread, it is still within our power to mend it. The same hands that built this crisis can build its solution. The same minds that created destruction can create renewal. The same species that brought the world to its knees can help it rise again. The future is not a sentence already past. It is a choice waiting to be made. And that choice demands courage. Because courage is the only thing strong enough to turn fear into action. We often think of courage as something grand, a single heroic act that changes everything. But courage is not always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet persistence of doing what's right when the world tells you it's pointless. It's the strength to speak when silence feels safer. It's the decision to act, not because you are certain of success, but because you refuse to surrender to failure. A call for courage is not a call to perfection. It's a call to humanity, to the part of us that refuses to look away. Courage is what separates awareness from action. We have been aware for too long. Now we must be brave. The comfort of denial has protected us, but it has also chained us to inaction. True courage is stepping beyond comfort, standing in the storm instead of waiting for it to pass. Courage is not limited to leaders or activists. It lives in everyone who chooses integrity over indifference. It lives in the student who demands truth in a classroom where lies are easier to teach. It lives in the worker who speaks up against systems that destroy for profit. It lives in the parent who teaches their child to respect life, not just consume it. Courage multiplies when it is seen. One act of bravery inspires another until it becomes unstoppable. And courage is contagious. When one person stands, others follow. History is proof that real change never begins with permission. It begins with defiance. Every movement that has shifted humanity forward started when someone, somewhere, refused to accept what the world called inevitable. Today, that someone must be all of us. Because this time, the stakes are not a law or a border or a right. They are the planet itself. The call for courage is a call to remember who we are. We are the species that crossed oceans, built civilizations, reached for the stars. Are we now to believe that we cannot protect the very ground we stand on? We have never been powerless, only hesitant. Courage means refusing to let fear dictate the story of our time. It means believing that hope is not naive, it's necessary. Hope without courage is just a dream. Courage without hope is just defiance. But together, they are transformation. The world is aching for that transformation, for voices that rise above apathy, for hearts that care enough to fight, for people who understand that courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The courage we need today is not just to face the crisis. It's to believe we can still change it. It's to look at the damage and still choose to rebuild. It's to face the darkness and still choose to light a fire. Because courage does not come after hope. It creates it. The moment we act bravely, hope is reborn. Every act of courage adds a heartbeat to a future that is still fighting to survive. The future in jeopardy is not lost, not yet. But saving it requires the one thing we've been afraid to summon, the courage to begin now. We are standing on the edge of what will be remembered as the most critical moment in human history. The future is not written in stone, it's written in our actions. The question is no longer whether we have time, it's whether we have the courage to use what's left of it. Because courage is not only the answer to fear, it is the antidote to regret. And there is no greater tragedy than realizing too late that we had the power to change everything. So here we stand, out of excuses, out of time, but not out of courage. Let that be our legacy. That when the world trembled, we stood tall. That when the future called for help, we answered. That when hope seemed lost, we created it. And that when history looked back on this moment, it did not see fear or failure, it saw courage.